Thank you for joining us today in Jennifer Schaus and Associates complimentary webinar series. We're coming to you live from Washington, D.C. today. This year on Fridays, we're covering procurement playbooks. We take a deep dive into doing business with the federal agencies and departments with our panelists. On Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern, we covered the FAR supplements, or procurement regulations for the agencies and departments. Fridays, we cover the business development and marketing aspects of the same agency and departments. The full schedule, sign-up links, and recordings are on our website. And here's just a look at what we've covered in our FAR supplements series so far. As you can see, we're almost done. We'll be winding down the series on August 24th with the Department of Veterans Affairs. And here's just a quick look also at our Friday schedule. Same thing, we're almost done with this series. Please note that this fall we will be starting a new webinar series covering subcontracting opportunities in the different government departments. These webinars will be Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern, and they begin September 7th with the Department of Agriculture. You can find the registration links and the full schedule on our website under the Subcontracting tab. And now we'd like to thank our sponsors who make this webinar series possible. First, we'd like to thank the Virginia PTAC. The Virginia PTAC is based out of GMU in Fairfax and offers free one-on-one counseling to firms in Virginia on federal, state, and local procurement topics. Online resources and group trainings are free with no restriction on business location. If you're interested in learning more, please use the links provided to explore what PTACs can offer. And a special thanks to the Federal Business Council. The FBC creates and manages virtual and in-person meetings and events to connect industry and government thought leaders, product providers, and solutions with government programs that use them. The FBC works with a variety of federal agencies to connect government and industry in the form of in-person and virtual conferences, training events, policy dialogue, and outreach. Over the last 40+ years, FBC has become a comprehensive resource for connecting industry and the federal government. And next, we'd like to thank Dastin. Dastin is an IT and cloud solutions provider working with corporations, the military, and government agencies to lower their costs, increase scalability, improve operational efficiency, and meet compliance regulations using targeted cloud-based solutions. Dastin is a certified partner of Oracle NetSuite, a premier tier Google Cloud partner, and certified partner of Cisco, Virtue, AODocs, and Authenticate. For more information about Dastin services or to schedule a complimentary consultation, please email Joe Alston or visit the Dastin website. Next, we'd like to thank C3. C3 ISIT develops tailor-made technology solutions that increase efficiency, bolster productivity, and improve business processes. C3 is the leading provider of managed IT services as well as compliant cybersecurity solutions for federal contractors. C3 works with defense contractors to achieve and maintain CMMC 2.0, DFARS, and NIST 800-171. Contact C3 to learn about the CMMC 2.0 Readiness Program. The contact information is on your screen. Next, we'd like to thank RLJ Financial. Founded in 2008, RLJ Financial Consultants is a customer-focused, quality-driven, minority and locally owned provider of commercial insurance brokerage services. Their services are designed to maximize your return on investment and managing the risk to your business. Call Roderick today at 202-832-1417 for a free consultation and insurance quote. And lastly, we'd like to thank the PubK Group. The PubK Group publishes news and insights for government contractors, agencies, and counsel. Every day, PubK delivers news on bid protests, contract disputes, new laws and regulations, cybersecurity requirements, False Claims Act activity, and developments in mergers and acquisitions in the GovCon community. In daily news briefs and in-depth conversations and podcasts and webinars, PubK leverages its deep bench of government contract experts to keep you up to date on fast-changing government rules and expectations. And every January, PubK presents its week-long annual review featuring more than 50 GovCon experts across a dozen panels, recapping the year's top developments. Participation and CLEs are free to subscribers. Visit PubK online at www.pubkgroup.com. All right, and today we are covering doing business with NASA. So let's meet our panelists for today. We want to thank our friends from FedMine, Miss Archisa Meehan. She's with us every Friday. It's great to have you with us as always.
It's always nice to be here. Thank you.
And today we unfortunately don't have a representative from NASA. So with that, Archisa, I'll let you take it away.
Perfect. Let's go to the next slide. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Madeline, for always being here, and thank you, Jennifer Schwartz, for including me in the Playbook series. Can't believe you're almost at the end of it. For those of you who don't know me, I am the director for federal go-to-market at GovSpan and FedMine. FedMine actually is a federal market intelligence platform that basically integrates the 18 federal data sets into one easy-to-use platform. Last year, with our acquisition by GovSpan, we now provide the best of the federal and state and local data and information. So having said that, let's go to the next slide and maybe just a quick look at some of our data sets. And next slide. Perfect. So let's talk about NASA. It was, for me, super interesting to spend some more time and learn a lot about NASA. I think I got pretty caught up in some of the information that we'll go over towards the end. But NASA is responsible for the unique scientific and technological achievements in human spaceflight, aeronautics, space science, and space applications, which truly have a widespread impact on our nation and the world. They are America's civil space program. They're also the global leaders in space exploration, and they actually have about 18,000 civil servants and support more than 300,000 jobs. You've heard me say that it's very important for us to understand what the agency's vision and mission is, because that is how, their funding is going to flow. I like their vision, exploring the secrets of the universe for the benefit of all. And their mission is pretty simple, but it does say a lot. When it says that it explores the unknown in air and space, innovates for the benefit of humanity, and inspires the world through discovery. I think their vision and mission says so much more. And that gets clearer as we sort of understand their spend and we get into, towards the end, the budget. So let's go to the next slide. Their strategic objectives, which I think is what they did last year, is when they put together their strategic plan, is maintaining America's global standing, driving economic growth, addressing the climate change, and promoting racial and economic equity. Pretty simple when we see that. But truly, when you start understanding what is it that they do, they study the Earth, including the climate and solar system and beyond. They conduct research, testing, and development to advance aeronautics. They fund space technology that will enable future exploration and benefit, including life on Earth. They're leading the Moon to Mars exploration approach. And they also support education efforts in STEM focused on increasing diversity. So for an agency, that's relatively small, they seem to be doing, and they do a lot of interesting missions, and are in charge of so much that we don't really pay attention to unless we really start getting into the details. At least that's what had happened with me. So let's go to the next slide. So one of the things that I wanted to focus on for NASA was their organization structure. The administrator and the senior officials truly provide the top level strategy, policy, and direction. Their chief financial officer and office lead the agency's budget development, execution, and the organization-wide performance management activities. And then they are divided into the various mission directorates and mission support officers at the headquarters, which manage the decisions on the investments and guide the operations of the various centers. So let's go to the next slide. This is just a quick look at all the various directorates. There is, of course, a lot more detail on their website, but I just thought I'll do a quick overview and have for you the top directorates and what each one does, which was, again, very interesting to look at. So let's go to the next slide. So let's look at the spend year over year. You could see that definitely the spend for NASA, has gone up from 19 billion to 20 billion in 2020, stayed at about that range in 21. Year to date, and I want to say this was as of maybe Tuesday when I did the slides, or Wednesday, the spend or the contracts that were awarded by NASA were at about $16 billion. We yet have August, 2 more months to go, so maybe it will be around that $20 billion. Let us see what happens. So let's go to the next slide. In FY21, we have about 3,700 companies that won $20-odd billion in contracts. California Institute of Technology, Space Exploration Technologies, Lockheed, Boeing, Jacobs, Orbital, are all, including Blue Origin, are all the top prime contractors. Next slide. Looking at your top NAICS codes, we do see a lot of research and development, as also guided missile, engineering services, facility support services as your top NAICS. But this is where I would say it will be very interesting for you to also focus in and understand the various PSC codes that are being used, because you could see that, you just in the top 10, you have R&D, in aeronautics, you have R&D space science, you have space transportation and launch. So I think you will get a lot more clarity if you look in understanding how NASA is spending, if you look at the PSC codes. So I would highly recommend that. Next slide. Looking at your place of performance, of course, with the California Institute of Technology, California is not only your top in terms of contracts awarded for where the company is headquartered, but also for place of performance. But looking at the place of performance, Alabama, Maryland, Texas, Florida, Colorado, Virginia, Washington, Mississippi, and Arizona are your top 10 states where in terms of place of performance. So it's always interesting to pay attention to what is happening in terms of the place of performance too, and helps you just focus in and get more and get a better understanding quickly on what programs and missions are being supported. Next slide. In terms of small business, we have a little more, almost $3.5 billion that were awarded to 2,200 companies. Science systems and applications, ATA, aerospace, ASRC, analytical mechanicals, astro robotic technology, a lot of interesting names and companies that are the top 10 prime contractors in terms of small business. Let's go to the next slide, because I'm pretty sure we will see the place of performance has changed. You have Maryland, California, Texas, Alabama, Virginia as your top 10 states in terms of place of performance. So it's always interesting to see how the place of performance changes when you might be looking at small businesses or the agency overall. Also pay attention to the set-asides that have been used. We have the 8A set-asides, SDVOSB, HubZone, Women-Owned, all being used as, in terms of set-asides. So it's always good to understand the mix and how that agency is procuring. Next slide. And then, of course, looking at the NAICS codes and the PSC codes, we will again see similar NAICS codes that are being used. However, right here, we also have the security guards and the industrial building construction NAICS codes that are being used for small business. Terms of PSC codes, a very nice mix again that I wanted to make sure you saw. Space vehicle components, construction, logistics support, R&D, general science, also engineering and technical services. So you definitely see a difference not only in the NAICS codes, but in the PSC codes when you start focusing on how are the contracts being awarded for small business. Now, definitely one of the things I always will tell you, this is just looking at the top level. It is based on the by contracting office, not funding office. Results will absolutely change. But this is where we want to also use keywords. Any business, I'm always encouraging using keywords in addition to your NAICS codes. Getting a little bit more focused just helps us get a better understanding of what is happening in terms of the services or the products that you supply. So just wanted to make sure I point that out again. Next slide. So again, when we're looking at contracts awarded, we also want to pay attention to how has the, what is happening with contracts that might have used the National Interest Action Code for COVID. So in FY20, we have about $46 million that were awarded to 151 companies. 63% of these contracts were awarded as small business in computer-related NAICS codes, R&D, facility support, and janitorial services. In FY21, 284 million, but was awarded to only 117 companies, and less than 12% were awarded as small business. Now, do also keep in mind when we talk as small business and other than small business, this is coming from a field where, this is the contracting officer's determination if a business is a small business or not. So next slide. So NASA does do a lot of research, and you want to pay attention to the contracts that they might be awarding as SBIRs and STTRs. In this case, you could see that NASA spend, especially between FY20 and 21 has been, in the $290 and $260 million range. Year to date so far, it's at 225 million. And I'm sorry, that should not be COVID spend. FY20 spend, contracts were awarded to about 536 companies as SBIR and STTRs. And the NAICS, of course, included computer-related and R&D NAICS codes. FY21, again, about 580 companies and similar NAICS codes. So if you are in the technology field, innovative research, things like that, pay attention to the requests that might come out for SBIRs and STTRs. And you can always track these on sam.gov or any platform like us, where you would start using keyword searches of SBIRs, STTRs, broad agency announcements, things like that. So next slide. So always we talk about NAICS codes and PSC codes, and for those of you who have heard me before, I'm always going to bring your attention to looking at spend by categories too. Categories are based off GSA's classification of category management, and it's really based off the PSC codes. Many times, I think it really gives us a much better look at how spend is quickly. And we, of course, are not surprised to see a lot more, a large portion, almost 50% of their spend in R&D. But it's also interesting to understand when you're looking at these broad categories, how much is going to small versus other than small. And this, again, will always tie in with the agency's mission and vision. So always keep that in mind. Don't look at numbers in isolation. Putting it all together and creating that story is really what's important. So next slide. So looking at your GVACs, pay attention to how the agencies are procuring. Now this is again based off contracting office, not funding office. You do see NASA SUP programs right on top. But keep in mind that this is that contracting piece that NASA is doing. They themselves might not be using this a lot, but NASA SUP is used by many agencies across, so keep that in mind too. Next slide. So let's look at the subcontracts. Almost $10 billion reported as subcontracts by 120 prime contractors in FY20 that were awarded to a little less than 2,000 companies. So that was super interesting. NAICS codes, pretty similar to what we've seen in terms of R&D and facility supports and engineering services. Next slide. In terms of your top primes, we have the Lockheed's, Boeing's, California Institute of Technology, M&M Government Services. So again, nice mix. And you could see who your top 10 sub-awardees were. And you could always get into details and things like that. Again, this search, the subcontract search, you always could do based on NAICS codes. You always could do with keywords. There's a lot of fun ways of looking at the subcontract data as you're trying to understand, who are the primes that are working with other subcontractors that have made that information public, understand the details, see if these are primes that you want to create relationships with. The other way of looking at it also is that, who are the various primes that are working with the various, who are the various subs, and use it either, whether you're a prime or a sub, there's strategies to use it. So next slide. So now when we start talking about opportunities, this is where, I think it's very important for us to understand what is an opportunity. Opportunities can be new opportunities that are really based on the new initiatives of an agency, which truly depends on the agency's need and the funding. And it also can be contracts that are expiring that could be recompeted. How do you get that information? Looking at the budget and program information, looking at pre-solicitations and source of sort notices in sam.gov, using your keywords, using your NAICS codes, using your PSC codes, creating expiring contract searches, again, based on the type of work that you do. If you're on an IDIQ or GVAC or BPA, look at the task orders that are expiring on those vehicles too. And many times, I always love starting broad, but I do want to filter in and get to the type of work that I'm doing that I'm interested in doing as you're looking at the contracts that are expiring, understanding, the program offices or the contracting offices, the way those contracts are awarded, and creating your strategies, with that information and relationships. So next slide. Also look at these Exhibit 53s, where you do find information on the top programs that are being funded and budgeted. Again, you can absolutely use the keywords, but this is just a nice quick look at understanding the budgeted amounts for FY22 at the various agencies. Let's go to the next slide. You can also go in and look at your top exhibits. You could see in detail the money that's been spent on the James Webb Space Telescope program. We're seeing so many amazing images coming out of there. And you could see that, so in FY22, that program was budgeted about $70 million. But again, I think the Exhibit 53s and 300s give us so much valuable information, especially if you're in the technology field. Exhibit 300s give you some very interesting or key information, including program manager names. So always keep an eye out and dig into those. Next slide. So let's look at our expiring contracts. Again, this is just at your top level. Things will change once you add on keywords, once you add on filters, once you add on, NAICS codes and things like that. We have about $26 odd billion in contracts that were awarded as other than small business that are expiring in the next 12 months. Quick look at all your top company contracts that are expiring, including Northrop, California Institute of Technology, Jacobs, Raytheon. Next slide. When you look at the top NAICS codes, you do see guided missile and space vehicle manufacturing, R&Ds, telecommunication, engineering, and a little bit of administrative support, facility support, NAICS codes too. In terms of place of performance, definitely California, followed by Maryland, Florida, Colorado are your top 10 states based on place of performance. Next slide. Let's look at the contracts that are awarded as small business that are expiring in the next 12 months. You have Arctic Slope, Millennium Engineering, AdNet, some of the names that if you are in the industry are very familiar with. But these are their contracts that are expiring. Next slide. In terms of NAICS codes, again, they are a little different. You do see the security guards, facility supports, administrative services, contracts that are expiring that were awarded as small business contracts. And in terms of set-asides, you do see some that were 8A competed and 8A sole source. If you are an 8A, if you are a relatively new 8A, it might be a good idea to do some searches based not only on expiration dates, but also based on when is that 8A company's status expiring, and use that to create your teaming relationships or just general relationships to see if you could work together. Various strategies that can be used, and this is just to give you an idea of the type of information you should be looking at. Next slide. Also, always pay attention to what are the opportunities out there. Pay attention to the pre-solicitations and source to sort notices. This is the way the agencies do market research, so please do respond to them if they are applicable to you. Next slide. And that really brings us to the budget. Their budget is super cool. They have and I would highly encourage you all to read it. But for me, I was very intrigued to learn about the fact that they have budgeted almost $5 billion for deep space exploration systems, including the Artemis goal of landing the first woman and the first person of color onto the moon's south pole. They have funding for, or they've asked for budget money put aside for the Mars campaign development. Space operations is at about 4.2 billion as a space transportation, which is budgeted at 1.7. They've also got money for space technology, almost $1.4 billion, which includes SBIRs, technology maturation, and early stage innovation and partnerships. almost $8 billion for sciences, including the earth and planetary sciences, astrophysics, heliophysics, biological and physical sciences. Almost $1 billion for aeronautics, which includes funding to modernize and transform the national air traffic management system and to support revolutionary concepts, including research on the zero emissions aviation. And I found that really interesting, which is why I sort of put in, just the broad numbers. Money for STEM engagement, and then a little more than $3 billion for safety, security, and mission services, as also construction and environmental compliance and restoration. So this is just top level budget items, but I would highly encourage you to pay attention to the budget that NASA's put together, especially if this is an agency that you want to focus on. There is a lot of important information, as always, in the budgets our agencies put together, and it really helps us to pay attention to that and look into that. And I think that is the end of my presentation.
Yes, thank you so much, Archisa, as always, for such great insights with your data. Now, like I said, we don't have a representative from NASA, but we quickly just want to go through a few quick links. You can also find these on our website if you click Doing Business with NASA. So the link to the main agency website, as well as their small business office, and then as well as their acquisition forecast, and finally the SBA scorecard. So we really encourage you to look at those. So thank you again, Archisa, for being with us. We really appreciate it. Thank you to everyone who attended. If you have any questions for Archisa, her contact information is on the screen now. The recording and slides from today's webinar will be available within the next 24 hours, though probably even sooner. So we look forward to seeing you next week as we dig into the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the NRC. So the FAR supplement will be on Wednesday, and then the Playbook on Friday. And as always, registration links are on our website. So we hope to see you there. This concludes the webinar. Have a great weekend.